I'm Ted Berg for SNY.TV, and this is Know Your Enemy, presented by Pepsi Max. The Yanks head to Detroit for a 4-game set starting tonight, so we're checking in with Al Beaton from the Tigers blog, blessyouboys.com. Al, how are you?
Hey, it's great to be back, Ted. Thank you very much.
No problem. Let's talk about some of the recent additions to the Tigers. They filled a huge hole at second base at the trade deadline.
Omar Infante has filled what we were calling a black hole at second base. They were getting no production out of Danny Werf, Ryan Rayburn, Ramon Santiago. Reacquiring Infante, the Tigers traded him away back in 2007, has really solidified middle infield defense and also given him an excellent bat at the number 2 spot. He had a big game yesterday in the Tigers' comeback win over the Tribe with 4 hits, I believe 3 RBIs and a home run. So he's really, he was actually, I think, he may end up being the most important piece of that deadline trade that included Sanchez.
And you mentioned the way Infante improves the lineup because of the struggles they had with their second baseman this year. There were always a couple of big holes. Now you look at, obviously the big bats in the lineup, but then all the way through it looks pretty strong.
It's much better, especially as Brian Rayburn has been put on the disabled list, so he's no longer clogging the middle of the lineup. Delman Young, they have finally moved him out of the 5 hole. He is specifically against right-handed pitching. He's been moved down in the order. Brennan Bosch has been moved up, and he's actually starting to hit the ball again. And guys in the bottom of the order who were struggling in the first half, who had excellent 2011s, are finally starting to pick things up, specifically Johnny Peralta and Alex Avila. So the lineup is looking much more like it was expected to at the beginning of the year.
And they're going to need to hit, and they're going to need Infante to be flexible defensively because their defense has not been so great this year.
To say the very least, Infante, his glove is very well. He can play all over the infield, and even in the series against the Indians, he was actually playing a lot of third base, especially late in games. Because say what you will about Miguel Cabrera, that he's had an okay season defensively, he's still not an elite glove, and Infante is much better. So being able to move Infante around and juggle the defense, and the Tigers can tighten it up much more late in games, makes them a much better team, especially late.
It should help their pitching. Let's talk about the pitchers in this series. We can skip Justin Verlander because he's so awesome it's hardly worth talking about. What have you seen out of Rick Porcello lately? I know he's been up and down all year.
Exactly. He's been up and down. He had a nice little stretch where his sinker was really working. Opposition was pounding the ball into the turf, and that's when he's doing his best. But you got to remember, with Porcello, the Tigers' defense does affect his numbers because he's a ground ball pitcher. He pitches to contact, doesn't strike out quite as many players as someone like Scherzer or Verlander. But he has, like I said, he's inconsistent. But people tend to forget he's still only 23 years old. This is a guy who's been in the big leagues almost 4 years now. So Porcello, for everybody kind of rails on, well, Porcello's average, he may end up being a 5-starter. But when he's on, when that sinker's working, this is a guy who is easily a number 2 or 3.
Anibal Sanchez, a guy they just picked up at the deadline, had a rough start in his first outing for the Tigers and then a good one in his second.
A very good one in his second, and it was a nice first introduction to the home fans. This is his first losses on the road, and that also Jim Leyland took a lot of blame for Sanchez's opening game struggle, saying he left him in the game too long, and that allowed Sanchez to allow a 3-run home run when he said he should have been pulled out. His second appearance was much better. He looks like that middle of the rotation guy that the Tigers acquired. If he can come anything close to what Doug Fister did last year, or what Doug Fister's doing right now, the Tigers may have one of the best rotations in baseball. Sanchez is that good. He's a rental. The Tigers gave up a lot to give him, but the Tigers went all in this year when they signed Prince Fielder. Everybody knows it. So the Tigers pulled out all the stops, and the acquisition of Sanchez and Infante means that this team needs to win and make the playoffs.
And you mentioned Fister, the 4th starter in this series, was so good for them after the deadline last year, and now it looks like he's picking that stretch up again.
Yeah, Fister had a rough first half, mostly because of injuries. He missed a ton of time, had 2 long disabled list stints due to a side strain. So it's kind of like he had a kind of a delayed spring training and wasn't even getting into form until near the All-Star break. And now that we're into August, he is fully back to full strength, and he is pitching just like he did at the end of last year when he was actually out pitching Justin Verlander.
Al, thanks so much.
Thank you much, Ted.
Remember, for all the latest Yankee coverage, be sure to check in at itsaboutthemoney.net and chat with other Yankee fans throughout the series at nyfans.com.